The Jungian Empath versus the Narcissist, Radiance versus Shadow, who the empath becomes after absorbing the Narcissist's darkness, and surviving Carl Jung introduction. When light becomes a threat, imagine for a moment that you are not just a person, but a living embodiment of light in a world that often prefers comfortable darkness. You enter a room and everything begins to change. The air becomes denser, charged with an invisible energy that emanates not from your words or actions, but from the very core of your being. This is not loudness, not beauty in the conventional sense, not the charisma taught in training courses. This is something far deeper, archetypal. It is a radiance flowing from the nucleus of your existence, from that place where your self dwells whole, undivided, and authentic. You yourself may not fully comprehend the source of this light. It simply is like the sun, like the law of gravity. It is a fundamental part of you. You feel the pain of others as acutely as if it were your own. You see the masks they wear for years, the social roles, the defenses, the illusions, and, most astonishingly, you continue to love them, seeing all of this. You give them your attention, your energy, your compassion, even when you yourself feel empty, drained dry. You forgive betrayals, lies, manipulations, because deep down you understand that all of this is the cry of a soul imprisoned in a dungeon. And then comes the moment when you face a paradox that wounds more deeply than any conscious insult. You begin to be hated for this very light. Not hated openly, not directly, not crudely or primitively. This hatred is quiet, hidden, underlying. It is saturated with envy, resentment, the very pain you sought to heal. Those very people who begged for your support, sought your solace, and called you an angel. A savior, the only one who understands. Now turn away. They whisper behind your back, he's too perfect, probably a hypocrite. A person can't possibly be like that for real. Their whisper is the echo of their own unrecognized shadow. Why are you hated precisely for what is your very essence for shining? The answer to this question lies not in the realm of personal grievances or human ingratitude. It is rooted in the deepest layers of the collective psyche. This is not personal, it is archetypal. The great Carl Jung, plunging into the unconscious, discovered a universal law: light always and inevitably gives rise to shadow. The brighter the light, the darker and sharper the shadow it casts, and today we embark on a journey into the very heart of this eternal confrontation. We will speak about the most dangerous, most painful, yet most transformative collision in the human psyche, the collision between the Jungian empath and the narcissist. But be warned, this will not be another story about toxic relationships that can be solved with a couple of magazine tips. No. This is a spiritual battle between radiance and darkness, a cosmic drama unfolding on the inner stage of the human soul. In this battle, the empath is not merely a passive victim suffering injustice. No. Having passed through the hell of contact with narcissistic darkness, they are reborn. They emerge from these flames not as ash, but as a tempered diamond, whose light becomes even more conscious, wise, and unquenchable. If you are watching this and feel that they are trying to extinguish you, that your kindness is used, your sensitivity mocked, and your radiance attempted to be eclipsed, know this. This video is for you. If you are tired of being good in a world that seems to punish kindness and encourage callousness, listen carefully. Prepare for a deep dive, because the knowledge, the inner resource you will gain today, can liberate you forever. The paradoxical law of relationships. Why you are hated for your light. Let's acknowledge the obvious. Human relationships rarely obey the logic of common sense. On the surface, we may exchange pleasantries, make plans, discuss news, but beneath this thin layer of consciousness churns a veritable ocean, the ocean of the unconscious. And it is its laws, deep, ancient, often ruthless in their truth, that actually govern our connections with others. These laws are not written in books on etiquette, but their influence is felt by anyone who has ever encountered inexplicable antipathy or unmotivated aggression. One of the harshest and most paradoxical laws of this hidden world states, those who shine too brightly inevitably awaken the shadow in others, and the awakened shadow takes revenge. Imagine a person who has lived for decades in a dark room. Their eyes have grown accustomed to the gloom, they have learned to navigate it. They have even found a semblance of comfort in this darkness. And then someone suddenly flings open a window and blinding sunlight floods the room. The first reaction will not be joy but pain. Pain in the eyes, disorientation, anger at the one who dared to destroy the familiar order. close the window will be their first cry. They are not grateful for the light. They are angry for the discomfort this light has caused them. In this metaphor, empaths are those who fling open the windows. They are not simply sensitive or kind people, no. They are living mirrors of the soul. Their presence, their very energetic frequency, possesses a unique quality. They expose what others have hidden for years, sometimes for a lifetime, in the most secret corners of their psyche. They expose falsity when a person says one thing but feels another. They expose the fear of being unloved, unrecognized, abandoned. They expose unlived pain, old childhood traumas that were never healed. They expose false masks, the mask of the successful professional, the strong man, the independent woman. Masks that people cling to like drowning men to a straw, just to avoid sinking in the ocean of their own vulnerability. And when a person sees in you, the empath, a living reflection of who they could have been, but lacked the courage to become, they feel not gratitude. They feel deep, crushing resentment. Why? Because your silent light, your wholeness, wordlessly tell them, lo, you too could be whole. You too could live in truth. You too could love and be loved not for a mask but for your true self. But you chose a different path. You preferred the safety of illusions to the risk of truth. This message is unbearable for someone who has built their life on compromise with themselves. Instead of meeting this pain, acknowledging it, and beginning the work of healing, the psyche chooses an easier path, the path of projection. They blame you. You become the scapegoat for their inner discord. It's because of you that I feel bad. You're putting too much pressure on me with your perfectionism. They cry when in fact it is their own conscience, their own I, speaking to them through you. Remember, this is not your fault. You are not doing anything wrong. This is the work of their shadow, which is panically afraid of the light. Your task is to understand this mechanics, to stop taking it personally. Empathy as a manifestation of the self. You are not a person. You are a channel. To understand the phenomenon of the empath, we must move beyond mundane definitions. Empathy is not merely a character trait, not the result of upbringing or a set of acquired skills. From the perspective of Jungian depth psychology, genuine, archetypal empathy is nothing other than a manifestation of the self. The self is the central archetype of wholeness, the divine spark within us that unites the conscious and the unconscious, the personal and the collective. When we speak of a Jungian empath, we are not simply talking about a sensitive person. We are talking about a vessel, a conduit for the collective unconscious. Through such a person flows archetypal energy of healing, compassion, and universal unity. They become a channel through which the energy of the anima, the inner femininity in its highest, compassionate aspect is revealed to the world, the energy of the healer archetype, the wise old man archetype. Therefore, when you are called a good person, it is but a pale shadow of the truth. You are a conduit of light. You came into this world not to be convenient, pleasant, and comfortable for others, no. Your mission, often unacknowledged by yourself, is to shatter illusions. You are the living embodiment of truth in a world built on compromises. You are a reminder that another way of being is possible. This is precisely why your mere presence changes the atmosphere in any space. It creates a field in which it becomes impossible for people to lie first and foremost to themselves. Around you, people instinctively feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to remove their masks, and this evokes in them either deep opening up or panic defensiveness. Because you are a living, breathing reminder that it is possible to be whole, not fragmented into parts. And for many, this reminder is the most terrifying challenge they can face. The reaction of others, why they fear you. Let's conduct a thought experiment. You, the empath, enter a room full of people. You don't say a word, you simply take your place. And here is what happens. Some people are almost physically drawn to you like plants to the sun. They feel the energy of acceptance and unconditional love emanating from you, and their souls, yearning for this, instinctively rush towards this source of warmth. But others tense up. Their shoulders involuntarily rise, their gaze becomes evasive, they turn away, bury themselves in their phones, start making nervous jokes. They cannot rationalize why they feel uneasy, but inside them, hidden irritation boils, sometimes even primitive aggression. Why? Because your light, like an ultraviolet beam, exposes their shadow, and the shadow, according to Jung, is not the bad part of the personality. It is an entire continent of repressed psychic material. It is everything a person person has ever rejected in themselves as unacceptable, bad, shameful, dangerous, their vulnerability and need for love, which they consider a weakness, their natural anger, which they suppress to be good, their healthy sexuality, which they drove underground out of fear or shame, their ambitions and right to be selfish, which they relinquished for the approval of others. And when such a person sees how you, the empath, live in harmony with all these aspects of your nature, when they see that you are not afraid to be vulnerable, that your anger does not destroy you, that your needs have a right to exist, their psyche perceives this as a silent reproach. Deep down, they feel, look, if he can accept all of this in himself, then I could have too. But I didn't. I preferred to lock it in the basement. And now, looking at him, I feel the price I paid for my order and this pain. The pain of realizing their own self-betrayal turns into hidden but powerful hostility towards you. You are hated not for who you are, but for who they could have been but never became. The shadow archetype, your strength is their pain. Let's delve deeper into Jung's concept of the shadow. The shadow is not just some bad qualities. It is an integral structure in the psyche, a dark repository of everything that our conscious ego refuses to acknowledge as its own part. These are our suppressed desires, unrecognized talents, repressed traumas, socially disapproved impulses. The shadow is our second hidden half. In this context, the empath's light acts like a spotlight beam directed deep into the cave where another person's shadow dwells. It does not attack, it does not judge, it simply illuminates. It makes visible what has been hiding in the darkness for years. But for someone who has spent decades building their identity on the denial of these dark contents, this light is a genuine psychological torture. In its light, they see with horror their systematic lies, which they long ago began to accept as truth, their spiritual and emotional greed, their inability to give, their emptiness concealed behind the glossy mask of social success. Faced with this reflection, the psyche is faced with a choice to acknowledge these contents as its own and begin the painful but healing process of integration, or to destroy the source of light that creates this reflection. And the overwhelming majority chooses the second path. Instead of saying, "Thank you, you helped me see my shadow, my work," the person whispers with resentment and reproach, "Why are you like this? You make me feel bad." You're deliberately complicating everything. But you, the empath, are not making anything happen. You simply are. You exist in your wholeness. And in this lies your fundamental innocence. But in this also lies your greatest danger to the world of illusions and half-lived lives. Transformation through empathy. You are a mirror of wholeness. It is important to understand one key thing. An empath does not heal others. In the direct sense of the word, they are not a shaman who can banish illness with a wave of the hand. Their function is much subtler and, if you will, more powerful. The empath reflects the potential for wholeness that exists in every person, but which in most is buried under layers of fear and trauma. When you look at a person without judgment, without hidden expectations, without the desire to remake them with your gaze, your energy, you silently communicate to them, "Look, I see your true self. I see that whole, beautiful, strong person that you are in the depths of your soul, and you can be that. You are worthy of it right now." This gift, the gift of unconditional acceptance, is the most valuable thing one person can offer another. But it is also the most frightening, because to accept it means to take responsibility for your own life. It means to renounce the convenient role of the victim, the sweet excuses, the familiar, albeit painful, suffering. It means to acknowledge that you yourself are the creator of your reality. Many are not ready for this, and then, to relieve themselves of the burden of responsibility, they project their inner struggle onto you. They accuse you of being perfect, meaning you remind them of their own imperfection. Inauthentic, meaning you don't correspond to their distorted view of reality. Imposing your vision, meaning you show them an alternative they are afraid to choose. But in reality, deep down, they are afraid of their own freedom. Freedom is terrifying because it requires from a strength, courage, and a willingness to walk uncharted paths. It is much easier to remain in a cage, blaming the one who walks free. The wounded healer archetype. Your light was born in hell. Now let's dispel an important misconception. The empath is not one who was born with rose-tinted glasses and never knew pain. On the contrary, you, the empath, are the classic embodiment of the wounded healer archetype. This archetype, described by Jung, states that the true ability to heal others is born only from from deep, personal, lived experience of suffering and subsequent healing. You are not just kind by nature. You are a healed bearer of wounds. You have passed through hell, through bitter betrayals from those you trusted the most, through existential loneliness, the feeling that you are from another planet, that no one will ever understand your depth, through the tormenting sensation that you are too much for this world, you feel too much, see too much, love too much, through attempts to drown out your unbearable sensitivity with alcohol, meaningless relationships, workaholism, escape into virtual worlds. And it is in the very heart of this darkness that you performed the greatest alchemical act. You found your radiance. You did not avoid the pain, you went through it. You transmuted it in your inner crucible. Therefore, your light is not a naive, childish optimism. It is the result of the alchemy of suffering. You know the darkness from within, you are familiar with every corner of it, and therefore your light is not blind. It is seeing, wise, compassionate. It shines precisely because it has known darkness. It is this quality, the combination of profound vulnerability and unquenchable light, that attracts narcissists to you with incredible force. They, like moths, fly to this fire. Their soul, starved for authenticity, instinctively senses in you the source of that unconditional love they lacked in childhood, and which they crave their entire lives. But here is the tragedy. Having received this love, they realize they cannot hold, control, or appropriate it. Unconditional love cannot be owned. It can only be gifted. The realization of their inability to accept this gift, of their inner void that cannot be filled from the outside, triggers narcissistic rage in them, and then they begin to systematically destroy you. Why? To destroy the living proof of their defeat, the proof that they are incapable of loving and being loved for real. By destroying the source of light, they can once again convince themselves that light does not exist at all, and return to their familiar darkness. The paradox of empath energy. Your light is like a lightning strike for a psyche immersed in illness. Ions, the empath's energy feels not like benevolence, but like psychological aggression. Why? Because there is a fundamental law of the psyche. Truth is always violent for a lie. When your authentic presence collides with another person's carefully constructed facade, a cognitive dissonance of such power occurs that their psyche perceives it as a threat to its very existence. You do not shout, accuse, or make demands, but your silent being in truth becomes the most destructive weapon. Against their house of cards self-deception, they subconsciously raid, if his way of existence is real, then my entire life is built on sand. All my achievements, statuses, roles are merely surrogates designed to conceal an existential void. And then the archetypal mechanism of projective identification is triggered. They don't just attribute their qualities to you, they make you believe in them. You are a manipulator. They cry, while they themselves virtuosically play on your feelings. You are arrogant, they accuse, unable to bear your calm dignity and independence from their opinion. You want to save everyone. They project because your capacity for compassion exposes their emotional impotence. In this archetypal drama, you are the light bearer, the heir of Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods for humanity, and they are the keepers of darkness, the priests of illusions, whose power rests on a universal agreement not to light candles. And your simplest gaze, full of understanding and acceptance, is more terrifying to them than any criticism, projection, and internal conflict. You are the screen for their fear people. In relationships with an empath, often see not his authentic essence, but a living screen for the projection of their deepest fears and unaccepted parts of their personality. You become a canvas onto which others unconsciously transfer the contents of their shadow. When a narcissistic personality declares, "You are too sensitive," in the language of the unconscious, this sounds like, "I am terrified of my own vulnerability, and therefore hate it in you." When a friend sarcastically remarks, "You think you're better than everyone," their psyche is actually screaming, "I hate myself for betraying my own potential." And your wholeness unbearably reminds me of this. This process is especially intense in the empath-narcissist relationship. The narcissist, with their fragile, almost non-existent ego, uses the empath as an external support mechanism for their identity. They seem to say, I exist only when I see my reflection in your eyes. But when they see in those eyes not the expected admiration, but depth, complexity, and their own truth, their psyche perceives this as a threat of disintegration. You walk on a razor's edge between two abysses, the light of your essence and the shadow of their fears. Every step you take is a test of authenticity and the ability to hold your boundaries under the pressure of another's unconscious strength and vulnerability. Your sensitivity is not weakness. The empath's sensitivity is an archetypal paradox, uniting the greatest strength and existential vulnerability. Your nervous system is not a defect, but a highly sensitive instrument capable of reading the subtlest vibrations of the psychic field. But it is this very feature that makes you especially vulnerable to the intrusion of uninvited energies. Without conscious psychological boundaries, this sensitivity becomes a curse, forcing you to absorb others' emotions, moods, and mental states like a sponge. You begin to carry within yourself an unbearable burden of others' pain, others' resentments, others' darkness, mistaking them for your own. This is the path to burnout, depression, psychosomatic illnesses. But those same qualities, enriched with awareness and strong boundaries, become a source of incredible strength. You turn into an alchemist of psychic energy, capable of not just feeling, but transforming it. Your task is not to dim your light to become convenient, but to master the highest art, the art of managing your gift without becoming its victim. You are not obliged to be available to everyone. You should not save those who are not ready for salvation. Your sacred duty is to preserve the flame of your soul, not to hand out its sparks to all and sundry, risking being left in the dark. The inner conflict of others, their resentment is their pain, the indignation, irritation, hidden aggression you encounter is not your personal problem, but a symptom of a deep internal conflict in those around you. Their reaction is an external manifestation of the struggle between their true self and the false personality persona, between the call of the soul and the fear of it. People who resent your light deep down desperately crave it. They intuitively sense that you hold the key to something they lack: authenticity, inner peace, the ability to feel deeply. But instead of humbly approaching and asking, "Teach me to shine too," their ego, defending itself, chooses a strategy of attack. Why do you shine when I can? Stop it immediately. In this question lies the entire tragedy of an unlived life, all the pain of betraying one's own essence. Their resentment towards you is a masked resentment towards themselves for the choices that led them into a dead end of illusions. Realizing this allows you to stop taking their reactions personally and begin to relate to them with a safe distance of compassion. The trap of the unconscious. You feel what isn't yours. One of the main traps for the empath is the erasure of boundaries between one's own emotions and the feelings of other people. You may suddenly feel an attack of anxiety, causeless melancholy, irritation, or anger without understanding their source. On a physical level, this can manifest as a sudden heaviness in the chest, headache, tension in the shoulders. This happens because your psyche, like a highly sensitive radar, picks up and absorbs the unconscious contents of those nearby. You feel your partner's hidden anger, a colleague's envy, a friend's existential fear, and begin to consider these states your own. You ask yourself, what's wrong with me? Why did I suddenly feel this? But this is the classic trap of unconscious identification. You are mistaking someone else's psychological dirt for a part of yourself. A key survival skill for the empath is to learn to discern the source of emotions. Ask yourself, is this anxiety, anger, sadness truly mine? Or am I just feeling it? Often, the simple act of awareness and mentally returning the emotion to its owner is enough to free yourself from its influence. Your role in this world is to be a light, not a trash can for others' darkness. Mastering psychological hygiene is not a luxury, but a necessary condition for your survival and the continuation of your mission. Empaths and their light, hope, or threat in the perception of others. The empath always finds themselves between two poles. They are seen either as an embodiment of hope or as an existential threat. Why? Because your light is a living mirror reflecting the unlived potential of everyone you meet. For those ready for inner change, you become a beacon, a signpost, proof that a different, deeper, and more meaningful way of life is possible. You give them hope that they too can one day attain such wholeness and inner freedom. But for those deeply immersed in illusions, you become a threat to their existence. Your presence makes them subconsciously remember who they could have become but didn't. And then the primitive defense mechanisms of the the psyche are activated, they try to extinguish you. To get rid of this unbearable reminder, it is important to understand the resentment and resistance you encounter are of an archetypal nature. This is not just a personal reaction of a particular individual, it is an echo of an ancient myth, repeating throughout human history. Prometheus, who brought the fire of knowledge to people, was chained to a rock. Christ, who showed the world love, was crucified. Socrates, who awakened reason in people, was sentenced to death. You are in the same mythological line. Your task in the modern world is not to sacrifice yourself, but to learn to protect your light with wisdom and dignity without renouncing your essence. Historical examples: prophets are always persecuted. The history of human culture is largely a history of persecution of light bearers. In all eras and civilizations, those who brought new knowledge, higher values, breakthrough ideas, faced fierce resistance from the system. Why does this happen? Because light inevitably destabilizes a system built on fear, control, and lies. Any established system, be it social, religious, or psychological, strives for self-preservation, and new light, new truth require a revision of foundations, a change of rules, a transformation of consciousness. Prometheus knew that people were not ready for fire, for knowledge, responsibility, freedom, but he brought it because he saw humanity's potential, and for this he was cruelly punished by the gods. Christ knew the world was not ready for his message of unconditional love and forgiveness, but he carried it because he could not do otherwise, and for this he was executed. In our time, you are not crucified on a physical cross. Modern methods of crucifixion are more sophisticated. You are cancelled on social media, devalued in professional circles, isolated psychologically. You are declared insensitive, inadequate, strange. But the essence remains the same. The world instinctively rejects those who remind it of its own unrealized greatness. Understanding this historical perspective gives you strength. You understand that your struggle is part of something larger, an eternal archetypal narrative. You are not alone in your experience. Perceiving resentment. This is not about you when you face inexplicable resentment, aggression, rejection. The key skill is to shift the focus from self-criticism to situational analysis. Instead of asking the destructive question, "What's wrong with me?" learn to ask, "What does this reaction show me about this person? And what does it signal about my own boundaries?" Often, the resentment of others becomes a precise indicator of your own unestablished or violated boundaries. If someone's behavior triggers a strong emotional reaction in you, it is likely that this person is unconsciously pressing on some unprocessed area of yours, activating an old wound, or violating your psychological space. At the same time, it is extremely important to beware of unconscious feelings of superiority that can stealthily infiltrate your consciousness. I am the light and they are the darkness. I am good and they are bad. This position is a trap of the spiritual ego, which cuts you off from reality and deprives you of humility. True light is humble. It does not need constant confirmation of its exclusivity. It does not demand that everyone recognize its power. It simply is steady, soft, but unquenchable. Like the flame of a candle in a dark room, it does not shout about itself. But it is impossible to ignore. Humility and faith. Your light is not a weapon. The key to genuine spiritual power is humility in using your gift. Your light should be a natural expression of your essence, not a tool for saving the world or proving your significance. Many empaths fall into the trap of the wounded rescuer. They unconsciously believe in destructive beliefs. If I am kind and responsive enough, I will finally be loved for real. If I give all my strength, all my energy, I will not be abandoned. My purpose is to suffer for others so that they become happier. These beliefs are not manifestations of high spirituality, but masked consequences of childhood trauma, most often traumas of rejection and emotional neglect. You learn to survive by becoming convenient, anticipating the needs of others, forgetting about yourself. True compassion is born from fullness, not from emptiness. It says, I see your pain. I am with you in this. I am ready to support you, but I will not become your victim. I will not take responsibility for your choices, and I will not allow you to destroy me. You in this dynamic are a witness and co-traveler, not a savior and victim. Your role is to be with, not instead of. The inner garden. You are not a public space. The metaphor of the inner garden describes the empath's psychological space with particular accuracy. Your inner world is a unique, fragile, and beautiful garden where the flowers of your feelings grow. The trees of your values stand, and the streams of your thoughts flow. If you open the gates of this garden to everyone indiscriminately, not only will those who admire its beauty enter, but also those who will accidentally or intentionally trample the flowers, break branches, leave trash. You will then spend months, sometimes years, restoring the damage done. Therefore, establishing healthy psychological boundaries is not an act of selfishness, but an act of profound self-respect and care for your gift. Boundaries are not walls fencing you off from the world, but a sturdy fence around your garden, with a gate and a lock. You yourself decide whom to let in, when, and on what terms. Yes, this means that many people will leave your light. Those who are used to taking without giving anything in return. Those who saw in you only a resource for replenishment. Those who do not respect your rules. But this is not a loss, it is a natural purification, a liberation of space for those who can truly value your light. The empath's test: to stand in the light without closing the heart. The true test of an empath's maturity occurs in moments of collision with aggression, misunderstanding, rejection. In these moments, you face the most complex existential task: to preserve three fundamental qualities simultaneously. First, to stand firmly in your truth, not to renounce your values, not to betray your truth, not to agree to compromises that destroy your integrity. This requires willpower and clarity of mind. Second, not to close the heart, not to build walls of resentment, not to wear a mask of indifference, not to extinguish the fire of compassion. This requires immense courage and faith in people. Third, to see the shadow but not to be consumed by it, to recognize the games of the ego, manipulations, projections, but not to allow them to define your perception of reality. This requires wisdom and discipline of consciousness. Your role in this world is not to make everyone comfortable and happy. Your role is to be a catalyst for awakening, the one who, by your example, your light, your very being, prompts others to reflect, to awaken, to begin their own path to themselves. And this is often painful, and this is often lonely. But this is your path, and you have no other. The empath's loneliness. Who protects the protector? The life of a genuine empath is a path of deep existential loneliness, not the loneliness caused by external circumstances, but that which stems from the very essence of your being. You are seen by many your kindness, your responsiveness, your willingness to help. But those who are able to see you, your depth, your complexity, your vulnerability behind the radiant facade are extremely rare. You are used as a source of comfort, support, acceptance. But you are rarely valued as a unique person with your own needs, fears, and limitations. You are loved for what you give, for the emotional nourishment that comes from you. But you are rarely loved for who you are, with all your dark sides, doubts, and imperfections. And in the most difficult moments, when your own strength is exhausted, you realize with bitter clarity, no one asks who protects the protector, who heals the healer. You are left alone with your pain, your fears, your exhaustion. And it is at this moment that the most important turning point in your development occurs. You understand that you can no longer seek salvation from without. You must become both for yourself. You must learn to be a loving parent for your inner child, a wise mentor for your confused part, a strong protector for your vulnerability. This is the path to true wholeness. The shadow ideal. They want to steal your light. Those who are so outraged and attracted by your light often unconsciously strive to appropriate it for themselves. An archetypal illusion arises in their psyche. If I am near him, if I possess his attention, his energy, his love, I will become just as luminous, whole, perfect. They are like thieves trying to steal sunlight, thinking they can carry it in their pocket. But light cannot be appropriated, it cannot be possessed like a thing. It can only be born within oneself through inner work, through accepting one's shadow, through the courage to be oneself. when they inevitably understand that their plan doesn't work, that your light cannot be stolen, that it remains yours regardless of their efforts. Narcissistic rage awakens in them. This rage is directed not so much at you personally, but at what you represent, the living proof of their powerlessness. The reminder that genuine transformation requires labor, not magical appropriation, and then they begin to systematically destroy you. Not physically, though, that is sometimes possible, but psychologically through devaluation, gaslighting, emotional blackmail. Their goal is to destroy the source of light to justify their own existence in darkness. For if there is no light, then there is nothing to strive for, and one can calmly remain in one's illusions. Radiance and resentment. Your light is a reminder of their strength. The empath's radiance causes such strong resentment precisely because it serves as a silent reproach, a reminder of the unrecognized, unrealized strength dormant in every person. Looking at you, others on an unconscious level feel, if he can be like this whole, authentic, living in harmony with himself, then I could have too. But I didn't. I preferred safety, comfort, social approval. And now seeing him, I feel shame for my cowardice. This pain from the realization of one's own self-betrayal is so unbearable that the psyche seeks ways to get rid of it. The simplest way is to destroy the source causing these experiences, instead of starting their own journey to themselves. The person chooses the path of accusation. You demand too much from life. You are too complicated. You live in some kind of your own world. Observe these reactions from a position of compassionate witnessing. Understand that behind every resentment, every reproach, lies someone's unlived pain, someone's unfulfilled destiny. But remember the most important rule. Their pain is not your responsibility. You can understand its sources, have compassion for it, but you are not obliged to become its victim or take upon yourself the work of healing it. The empath's shadow. You too are afraid of being selfish. Even the most developed empath has their own unprocessed shadow. Most often, it is associated with deeply rooted fears and beliefs inherited from family, culture, society. The fear of being selfish is perhaps the most destructive for the empath. You were taught from childhood that thinking of yourself is bad, that your own needs should come last. And now, when you try to set boundaries, your own shadow whispers, you are becoming bad, heartless, selfish. Guilt over insufficient kindness is another aspect of the empath's shadow, even when you have already given all you could. Your internal blind spot continues to reproach you. You could have done more. You could have been kinder. You could have endured more. Suppressed anger is perhaps the most dangerous part of the shadow. Accumulating over years, finding no outlet, it can turn into a toxic cocktail of resentment, disappointment, and cynicism, poisoning you from within. The resentment that others project onto you often mirrors your own resentment towards yourself, for having stifled your own needs for too long for the sake of others, betrayed yourself for the sake of harmony, remained silent when you needed to speak. The work of self-awareness for the empath is primarily work with one's own shadow. Only by integrating your dark aspects, accepting your right to anger, to selfishness, to rest, will you stop unconsciously attracting people who will project these qualities onto you, and learn not to take others' darkness personally. The turning point. Your light is not for everyone. There comes a moment in every empath's life when a qualitative leap in self-awareness and awareness of one's gift occurs. You understand that your light is not a boundless resource to be distributed to all and sundry, but a precious capital intended for cultivation of yourself, your loved ones, your projects, your space. This realization comes with the understanding not every person deserves access to your innermost eye. Some people come into your life as teachers to show you your weak spots, your unprocessed traumas, others as fellow travelers on a certain segment of the path, and only a few as those to whom you can entrust your heart without fear of betrayal. At this moment, you move beyond the archetypal dichotomy of savior-victim. You cease to see yourself either as the one who must save everyone, or as the one whom everyone uses. You become the keeper of the firewise, conscious, selective in your connections and energies. Compassion and self-sacrifice. True compassion comes from wholeness. It is time to distinguish between two fundamentally different concepts that empaths often confuse: genuine compassion and destructive self-sacrifice. True compassion is born from fullness, from a sense of inner wholeness and resourcefulness. It says, I have love, strength, support, and I am ready to share this with you without depleting myself. It is like a full-flowing river that can quench the thirst of many without running dry itself. Self-sacrifice, however, always comes from emptiness, from a wound, from a sense of one's own inadequacy. It whispers, "If I give you everything I have, maybe you will finally love me and I will feel my worth." This is the position of a beggar trying to buy love with his last pennies. Realizing this difference gives you profound inner calm. You begin to distinguish situations where your help will be beneficial from those where it will only support someone's dependency. You stop unconsciously absorbing others' resentments and problems. Instead, you learn to reflect them back to their owner with love, but without merging with participation, but without loss of self. The path of maturity. You are not obliged to be like the empath's maturity arrives when you own the deep-seated fear of being misunderstood, rejected, judged. You accept a simple but revolutionary truth. You are not obliged to be liked by everyone. Moreover, if you are liked by everyone, you are likely betraying some part of yourself. At this moment, you cease to need constant external approval. Your self-worth begins to emanate from within, from your connection with the self, not from the reflection in the eyes of others. And remarkably, it is then that those who previously rejected your light become your greatest teachers. Their reactions, their criticism, their rejection begin to serve you as precise indicators. They show you where your weak spots are, those zones where you still doubt yourself, where your boundaries are still shaky. They expose your unestablished boundaries, those areas where you still allow others to violate your psychological space. They point to the places where you are still seeking love through giving, where your generosity is dictated not by abundance, but by hunger for recognition. Their resentments, their resistance, their criticism temper your light, making it more conscious, stable, unquenchable. Like steel tempered in fire, your soul becomes stronger without losing its flexibility and radiance. The inner light. You have forgotten yourself. The paradox of many empaths is that, being attuned to the feelings and needs of others, they often completely ignore themselves. You become an expert on others' souls, but remain a stranger to your own. And your soul, meanwhile, quietly weeps, thirsting for your attention. It whispers, "Look at me, listen to me, find out what I truly want. Love me not for what I can give to others, but simply for what I am." The process of integrating your own shadows, accepting your imperfections, acknowledging your needs and desires radically changes your relationship with the world. When you begin to honestly look into your own darkness, you stop reacting so sharply to the shadow in others. When you fill yourself from within, you stop seeking confirmation of your value externally. You begin to understand that the most important work is not saving the world, but cultivating your own inner garden, and that, paradoxically, this is the greatest contribution you can make to the healing of the world. The empath's dream, to carry light through darkness. The deep, often unacknowledged dream of every true empath is to carry their light through the darkest corners of the human soul, not allowing it to be extinguished. Despite all the attempts of others to blow out this flame, every encounter with misunderstanding, every betrayal, every attempt at manipulation becomes for you a test of your resolve. Will you be able to remain yourself when everything around you tells you to be like everyone else? Will you be able to continue loving when you are returned hatred? Will you be able to believe in the light when you are immersed in the thickest darkness? But it is precisely these trials that become for you a confirmation of the highest hope, because even in the most calloused, most cynical, most damaged hearts, you continue to see that very spark, the particle of the divine that never fully goes out. And your role in this world is not to light this spark for them, for that is impossible. Each must light their own fire, but to be a living reminder that it exists. With your presence, your light, your unquenchable faith in human nature, you show others, look, the fire exists, and it can burn in you too. Energetic boundaries. Your garden is not for everyone. Developing a strong, stable inner center is a key task for the empath's survival and flourishing. This center becomes your inner sanctuary, a place you can always return to restore your strength. Gain clarity. Remember who you are. When this center is strengthened, you gain an amazing ability to feel deeply, empathize, understand without losing yourself, without dissolving in the other, without burning out. Boundaries in this context are not walls of alienation, but natural fences of your inner garden. Imagine a beautiful garden with tended paths, flowering beds, quiet arbors. This garden has a fence with a gate. You yourself decide whom to let into your garden, when, and on what terms. You can allow someone to walk the main alleys, someone to sit in the arbor, and invite someone to the most intimate place, to the rosebush that grows in the heart of the garden. When you begin to live in accordance with these internal boundaries, when you stop letting into your garden those who trample the flower beds and break branches, resentment loses its power over you. You no longer feel like a victim of others' behavior. You become the master of your inner space. Authenticity and inspiration. You are not obliged to be convenient. Empaths have a magnetic property of attracting people who deep down dream of being just as free, whole, authentic. Your light becomes for them living proof that a different way of life is possible. But instead of being inspired by your example and starting their own path of transformation, many of them choose the path of veiled resentment. It's easier for them to accuse you of excessive complexity, unrealisticness, detachment from life than to admit, I want to live like that too, but I'm afraid. And here you face the most important choice: to allow this misunderstanding to extinguish your light. Is it worth dimming your authenticity, making yourself more convenient, simpler, more understandable so that others feel comfortable around you? The correct answer is no. Your authenticity is not a personal quirk, but your main gift to the world. It is precisely in your uniqueness, in your imperfection, in your courage to be yourself that you serve the most important purpose. You remind everyone else of the right to be themselves. And even if you are not understood, even if you are rejected, even if you are called strange, you will remain true to yourself. And in the final analysis, this is the greatest victory you can achieve: victory over the fear of being yourself in a world that constantly tries to make you like everyone else. Final. You survived. Now you are the fire. You have passed through the most severe trial that can befall a light-bearing soul. You met the darkness of the narcissist face to face, not as an abstract concept, but as a living, breathing force possessing its own hypnotic fascination. You absorbed its poison. You almost suffocated in its toxic fumes. You doubted whether you would survive, whether you would preserve yourself, whether you would turn into the same hollow semblance of a person. But you survived. You didn't just survive, you passed through this hell and emerged from it transformed. And now you are not just an empath. Now you are a transformed light bearer, initiated by darkness. You know it from within, you understand its mechanisms, you feel its temptations, and therefore your light is no longer naive. It is wise, seeing, conscious. It shines precisely because it has known darkness, not because it is unaware of its existence. You are no longer a victim of circumstances, not a passive recipient of others' influence. You are an alchemist who has managed to perform the greatest transformation, to turn poison into medicine, pain into wisdom, suffering into compassion, darkness into an even brighter light. And now your task is extremely simple and incredibly difficult at the same time: to burn. To burn not in order to blind anyone. To burn not to prove your significance. To burn not to illuminate the whole world, though your light will do that too. To burn for the sake of burning itself. Because burning is your nature. Because only those who respect their own light teach by their example others to respect their own. You have already passed through the darkness. You know its price and its lessons. Now burn. Burn steadily, stably, unquenchably. And remember, the brightest light is often born from the thickest darkness. You are the living proof of this. Subscribe to our channel. Watch the previous videos. We have a lot of interesting content on psychology, finance, and personal growth. Write in the comments whether you have passed the empathy test, like, share with friends. Until we meet again in our space.